倒す、人々を導く。悪の向こう側、神の御業、世界を取り戻す。
ドレルは世界を壊すと言っていたが。
What happens when one of the most terrifying creatures in a fantasy world is forced to become something he never wanted to be? A teacher, a protector, and almost a father. That strange question is at the heart of Clevatess Season 2, and after the first season turned a seemingly straightforward dark fantasy adventure into something much more complicated, the second season has arrived with an even bigger world, more characters, deeper mysteries, and a completely different environment for its central trio. And the important thing to know right now is that this is no longer a future sequel waiting for confirmation. Clevatess Season 2 is already airing. The second season officially began in Japan on July 8, 2026, and it is streaming internationally on Crunchyroll, including the Middle East and the Indian subcontinent. To understand why the second season matters so much, we have to go back to the situation that ended the first one. Alicia was once a girl who dreamed of becoming a hero, and she eventually became one of the 13 heroes chosen by the king, but her journey was never a traditional heroic adventure. Clevatess, one of the world's lords of dark beasts, killed her during the opening conflict, only for circumstances to eventually bring the two of them together again. At the same time, Clevatess became responsible for Luna, a mysterious humanoid baby whose existence could be connected to the survival of the world. What began as a violent confrontation gradually became an unlikely relationship involving a monster, a resurrected hero, and a child. By the end of the first season, that relationship had become the emotional center of the entire story. The first season finale left Clevatess facing a decision that was surprisingly personal. Luna was devastated when Klen appeared ready to leave, while Alicia continued fighting Drell alongside Rod. Clevatess had already begun questioning his own desire to return to the Moon Mountain and abandon everything connected to humanity. But when Luna struggled to stand on his own 2 feet and walk forward while fighting back his tears, Clevatess was forced to confront the possibility that watching Luna grow had become important to him. That ending didn't simply close one adventure, it changed the direction of the story. The second season begins from that emotional foundation and asks what happens when these characters have to live among humans again, rather than simply fighting against them. And that is where the second season immediately takes an unexpected turn. After their journey and the events surrounding Luna, Klen and Alicia become connected to Solsein Divine Academy. The official story explains that after reuniting with Queen Mother Tora and Luna, Klen is rewarded for protecting Luna and is appointed as the child's dedicated magic teacher. But because Luna's education won't begin until he is 3 years old, Klen and Alicia spend roughly the next 2 years attending Solsein Divine Academy. So instead of simply continuing with another road trip-style fantasy adventure, the series moves its characters into a magical academy environment. That change is much more important than it might sound. Clevatess has always been built around the contrast between monsters and humans, but an academy gives the story a controlled environment where that contrast can become much more complicated. Klen is not entering this world as an ordinary student. Alicia is not simply returning to school either. Their identities, abilities, histories, and secrets all make the academy a potentially dangerous place. The second season therefore creates a strange situation where characters who have survived monsters, battles, political conflicts, and death now have to deal with classrooms, magical training, fellow students, and the social rules of a completely different world. The official second season story reveals that Klen infiltrates Solsein, while Alicia takes the name Alyssa. Their first major challenge involves magical practical training. Students are expected to use a wand and incantation to light a lamp, and Alicia eagerly volunteers to try first. Meanwhile, the top 3 students of the year, Ray, Mary, and Andrew, successfully demonstrate their abilities. A seemingly nervous student also approaches Alicia, introducing another relationship that could become important as the story develops. This new environment also introduces a major group of characters. The returning cast includes Haruka Shiraishi as Alicia, Matsumi Tamura's Klen, Yuichi Nakamura's Clevatess, Takaya Kuroda as Vordine, Megumi Hana as Zafti, Tomokazu Sujita as Raswell, Seiya Aizawa as Luna, Tomoyo Kurosawa as Nea, and Seki Tomokazu as Rod. The second season adds Shuichiro Umeda as Rei, Yurina Kikuchi as Mary, Tatsumaru Takebana as Andrew, Ryota Suzuki as Taigal, Hiromu Mainta as Leon, Misaki Kuno as Sarasa, Kautaro Nishiyama as Edison, Akira Seken as Milia, and Shiro Sano as Romin. And these aren't simply extra names added to make the cast bigger. The promotional material makes it clear that the Academy setting brings a new generation of characters into the center of the story. Rei, Mary, and Andrew were specifically highlighted in promotional character visuals before the premiere, with the official material presenting them as students living their everyday lives at Solsein. Their presence gives the second season a different rhythm from the first, because the story can now explore friendships, rivalries, abilities, secrets and relationships within the Academy, while still maintaining the darker fantasy atmosphere that defines Clevatess. Nea also continues to be an important part of the expanded story. She is a wizard capable of controlling magnetism, and promotional material for the second season showed her in a much more relaxed, everyday situation than the dangerous battles audiences might expect from Clevatess. That contrast is one of the interesting things about the sequel. The series is not abandoning its darker side, but it is giving the characters more room to exist outside constant combat. There is a greater sense that the world is becoming a place where characters actually have lives, responsibilities, friendships, and secrets, rather than simply moving from one battle to another. Behind the scenes, the core creative team is returning as well. Kiyotaka Taguchi directs the anime at Lei Duce, with Keigo Koyanagi handling series composition, Soichiro Sako responsible for character design and overall animation direction, and Nobuaki Nobusawa composing the music. The official production credits also list Natsuko Kondo for sub-character design and overall animation supervision, Takuro Tsukada as animation director, Atsushi Morikawa as art director, Rei Iwasawa for color design, Shigeaki Asakawa as director of photography, Naoki Tsuji as CG director, and Tsuyoshi Sadamatsu handling editing. The music has also received a major update. The second season's opening theme is Foreshadow, performed by Mayu Mishima, with lyrics, composition, and arrangement by RON. The song was released digitally on July 9, one day after the anime premiere. Mishima also returned for the opening after working on the first season, and the official description of the song emphasizes resistance against powerful forces that attempt to control the world and the individual. That theme fits Clevatess surprisingly well, because the series has always been interested in characters struggling against systems and expectations that are much larger than themselves. The ending theme takes a different emotional direction. Myth and ROID perform Awaken You, with the group handling the lyrics, composition, and arrangement. The song was released on July 16, and the group described its theme as self-acceptance, confronting painful parts of the past, accepting aspects of yourself that you would rather reject, and finding a new version of yourself after that struggle. That description feels especially appropriate for a story centered on Alicia, Klen, Clevatess, and the other characters, because almost everyone in this world carries some kind of contradiction between who they were, who others believe they are, and who they are becoming. The production also received significant attention before the season actually premiered. In June, the official team released another promotional trailer and introduced more information about the new characters and second season story. Then, on July 5, the first episode was given an advance online screening in Japan before the regular television broadcast. At Anime Expo 2026 in Los Angeles, a special Clevatess Season 2 panel was also held with director Kiyotaka Taguchi and Lei Duce producer Seiichiro Kuriyama, featuring discussion about the production and an early screening of the first episode for attendees. The premiere itself arrived on July 8 across 27 Japanese television networks, while streaming began internationally at the same time through Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll's summer lineup lists Clevatess Season 2 for Wednesdays, with both subtitled and dubbed releases available in the listed regions. The streaming availability includes North America, Central and South America, Europe, Africa, Oceania, the Middle East, the CIS, the Indian subcontinent, and Southeast Asia. So for viewers following the series internationally, Season 2 is not delayed behind the Japanese broadcast in the way older anime releases sometimes were. And now we reach the most important current update. As of August 25, 2026, the second season has already reached its 7th broadcast chapter, which aired around August 19, and the 8th chapter is scheduled for August 26. The official Japanese site has already published the story information for the 8th chapter, so viewers are now right in the middle of the season's ongoing storyline rather than waiting for the sequel to begin. The official site is also continuing to post updates about schedule changes, character material, and story information as the broadcast progresses. The 8th chapter is particularly interesting because the official story information confirms that the Academy storyline is continuing, while the characters face increasingly complicated situations. At this stage, the safest way to describe the season is that the Academy is becoming much more than a simple backdrop. Klen and Alicia have entered a world where knowledge, magic, identity, and power are all connected, and the people around them may not be nearly as straightforward as they first appear. The official site has already released the story information for the 8th chapter, but with the episode still scheduled for August 26, there is no reason to spoil what viewers have not yet seen. There is also a much larger threat hanging over the story. Before the second season premiered, a new visual teased a confrontation between Clevatess and Vordine, another of the 4 Lords of Dark Beasts. The visual was presented with the phrase, "The Last Reckoning," directly signaling that the relationship between these powerful beings is heading towards something much larger. That does not mean every detail of the eventual conflict has been revealed, and it would be misleading to pretend we already know how it will unfold, but the official promotional material makes one thing clear. The Academy storyline is not the only major direction Season 2 is building toward. The manga itself also gives the franchise room to continue expanding. The official series material identifies Yuji Iwahara as the original creator, and the manga is still being published digitally. The current English webtoon listing had reached episode 89 on August 23, 2026, meaning there is an ongoing source story behind the anime rather than a completed manga that has already reached its final ending. That matters because it means the anime has a continuing narrative foundation to draw from, even though we should not assume exactly how much of the manga the current season will adapt or what future anime installments might look like. There is also a physical release planned for the second season. The official production team has announced a Blu-ray box for November 27, 2026, with a newly illustrated box by character designer Soichiro Sako, an original manga booklet illustrated by Yuji Iwahara, and a materials collection titled Clevatess, along with other purchase bonuses. So even while the television broadcast is still underway, the franchise is already preparing its home video release and additional material for fans. What makes all of this especially interesting is how dramatically the identity of Clevatess has evolved. At first glance, it looked like a dark fantasy story about a powerful monster, a dead hero, and a mysterious baby. But the first season gradually transformed that premise into something much more character-driven. Clevatess became less interested in simply destroying humanity and more interested in understanding it. Alicia went from aspiring hero to someone caught inside a much larger truth about heroism and power. Luna became more than a child to protect. He became one of the reasons Clevatess had to reconsider his relationship with the human world. Season 2 takes that transformation and puts it under pressure. Klen and Alicia are now surrounded by students, teachers, magical systems, hidden motives, and a society that has its own definitions of what makes someone a hero or a monster. The irony is obvious. The creature who should be the greatest monster in the room may understand the people around him better than the people who call themselves civilized. And Alicia, the former hero, now has to navigate a world where the word hero itself may not mean what she once believed. That is why the title of the second season, with its focus on the legend of the false hero, is so important. The series has always questioned the simple division between good and evil, but now it is pushing that question directly into the idea of heroism. Who gets to be called a hero? Who decides what a monster is? What happens when someone who was supposed to save the world becomes connected to the creature everyone fears? And perhaps most importantly, what happens when the people who claim to protect humanity are hiding truths of their own? With Season 2 already airing and Episode 8 scheduled for August 26, Clevatess is now well beyond the announcement stage. The sequel has a confirmed production team, a returning main cast, a larger supporting cast, new music, a new academy setting, international simulcast distribution, ongoing weekly episodes, a growing manga source, and a major conflict involving Vordine already teased by the official promotional material. And the biggest reason to keep watching is that the story has not reached its answer yet. Clevatess Season 2 is taking the strange relationship established in the first season and placing it inside a world where appearances, identities, and legends can all be questioned. The monster is still a monster, the hero is still a hero, and the child is still at the center of everything, but none of those descriptions are as simple as they once seemed. As the Academy story continues and the larger conflict begins moving closer, the real question is no longer whether Clevatess can defeat another enemy. It is whether these characters can discover what they truly are before the world decides that answer for them. And that is exactly where Clevatess Season 2 currently stands, not as a distant sequel rumor, but as an active 2026 anime season that has already begun revealing the next stage of its story. With the 8th chapter arriving on August 26 and official updates continuing throughout the broadcast, the series still has plenty of unanswered questions ahead. For anyone who enjoyed the first season because it refused to behave like a conventional fantasy story, the second season is continuing that same idea on a much larger scale.